video camera open or how?
Yes, video camera on. We are live. Just give me a
Oh,
moment.
so we'll just wait for a couple of minutes for everyone to join.
Cool.
So this one you can use. I can just quickly आगे जा सकती हूँ इसमें.
हाँ मतलब पेमेंट्स का आई डोंट थिंक दे मतलब जेनरिक बिजनेस फंडा दे सकते हैं बिकॉज पेमेंट्स तो आई
हाँ
थिंक इज लाइक एड ऑन फॉर देम आई थिंक
हाँ वही चाहिए.
Moksha, we are actually live. We can start now, I guess.
Okay,
हाँ हाँ
perfect.
We can
ओके
start, yeah.
So,
ओके
yeah. Hello, good evening, everyone. You all know me, Moksha. And with
हाँ
me today, it is my privilege to welcome
हाँ
Mr. Reeju Datta. He is the co founder of Cashfree Payments, one of India's leading fintech companies. And I think since co-founding Cashfree in 2015, he has helped build a payments infrastructure that powers over 1 million businesses with seamless payment connections, payouts, and financial solutions as well. So, under his leadership, Cashfree has become one of the India's most trusted platform for payments, and also backed by trusted partners like Y Combinator and SBI, and continues to drive innovation in the fintech ecosystem. So it's over to you, Riju. Please give your valuable insights to our startups.
sure
Just 1 second. I think you are not audible. Just give me 1 second. Devanshi, can you check, please? Yeah.
am I audible
Yes,
hello
yes. Fine now. Yeah.
yeah cool thanks Moksha for having me is what I
There is some technical issue from Reeju side, I guess, Moksha.
Yeah, he's not audible.
just a sec
No, no, no. Wait. Devanshi, can you unmute everyone?
am I audible now
Yeah.
Yes, you are.
okay sorry for that. Yeah, so I think we'll start, and the idea is we'll maybe like keep it interactive as much as possible. So like just feel free to ask questions straight up. I think rather than me speaking, I think it's just better if we keep this very interactive, right? And just have a great discussion about what you guys are building. What kind of challenges you're facing, right? And anything that I can be helpful, right? uh, that can be there. So we have a deck I think, but
Yes, yes.
again I will just ramble on more in a more generic fashion, maybe talk about our experiences also. I think Moksha, I think kind of we know each other from our days at Y Combinator, like which is an American US based incubator, now very famous because a lot of involved quite heavily with OpenAI and all the of the AI boom, right? But yeah, that's where we were kind of for us. I think it was the first time we raised money. I don't know about Moksha, but yeah, that's how we were there. um so yeah, I mean, let's maybe go through the deck also, and just feel free to stop me and ask me anytime, about any of the
Uh,
questions. So yeah, let's go ahead. How do we move the deck? Can I
yeah,
do
I
it or
can
no?
move quick.
Yeah. So I think a lot of it is about, I think, payments and compliance. So what I understand is you guys are all young startups. I think at a very early stage, and like barely, I think, either not funded, barely registered, or maybe just raised angel rounds of funding. So I'm just assuming that, like, very early days of traction.
Yes.
So the maybe less good part is those are the hardest days for us, I think. I mean, usually, and things usually get easier with time, if that. Maybe that is the good part, right? So if you were to ask me right now, I think, like, now we have kind of reached a certain scale and certain size. I would say it is relatively much easier, right, to manage things when you are at a much higher scale. Like, for instance, we did like 1,000 crores of revenue last year, right, and a very, like, almost a million businesses users. But that is still much easier, I would say, uh,
Mm-hmm.
uh, from what from my experience, as compared to where we were, back, let's say, 7, 8, 9 years back,
Right.
when we had maybe, let's say, less than 100 customers, and we're not doing as much of revenue. uh, yeah, so that's the thing. Like, it's very hard, or the hardest it is hardest to get the plane off the ground. But once there is momentum, and once you start flying, then it's just easier to continue
Yeah.
on that momentum. So
Right.
yeah, that is like the short message, I think. Uh, yeah, so I think the startup part, 0 to 1 journey is the hardest, and that's where you see most startups fail, right? Like 99% startups fail early rather
Yeah.
than late. So
A lot of
like,
startups at our center, they also
hmm,
pivot after a point of time that this is not
yeah,
working, and this we might want to, a little tweak here. And I
uh,
remember at YC, when Cash Free entered, you were,
yeah.
I'm not sure, working on a different model, and then you pivot, and rest is history.
Ha,
Am I
so I
right about
think,
it or not?
yeah, I mean, we've changed our focus a bit. I think that time, like, so that time what we were doing was something we thought was very new and different, and that helped us get a wedge
Mm,
specific to our story. And then we figured out, like, it's better to do something that is already happening. And that's actually another point, right? Like, it's better to do something that is already established, and do that differently and well, rather than
mm,
doing something that is, completely different, where there is a higher risk that,
right.
maybe this thing is not even accepted in the market. Why
Mm,
I want to make that point is, a lot of time people say, yes, where is the innovation in this? Yeah, what is the idea? What is the cool new thing? But that cool new thing can be more about, doing an existing thing in a radically new way of execution, right? So
right.
and so that, I think, is also very important. So what we built, what we do today, we help businesses collect payments online, right? That is
Mm,
something that has been possible in India in 2000, 2005, very early days. If you remember, IRCTC
mm,
also did that. I think people are
right.
young, they may not know
Right.
IRCTC, but IRCTC is the first e-commerce company of India at any
India.
scale, right? Your
Mm,
booking of train tickets, right?
mm,
So you could do that in 2005, and then 2010 Flipkart, and so on. Like, so so you could always do that, but there were new ways or better ways of doing that.
mm,
Largely, let's say 2010 was all about website payments, right? People were doing website e-commerce. 2005 things started going a bit mobile app, so
mm,
these technology changes happened, right? 2010 was maybe more apps, and at a higher scale, and consumer focus, helped a bit by the COVID. So more scale, and
right.
very large number of smaller startups. And now we are going towards maybe an AI-led commerce, right? So another shift
Yes.
is happening. So at any point
Yes.
of time, you need online payments, right? But, like, maybe the way to do that changes slightly. But if
Mm,
you, like, really focus into the details and do a good job of processing online payments, you have an option where you can make it and break open the door. So that is the thing to say. Like, even today, for instance, right? Like, you might say there is Swiggy, Zomato.
Hmm.
right? But even in 2025, you will see new types of companies in food delivery that get started in Bangalore. Maybe they have not reached Jhansi yet, but
Okay.
like there are people who are actually, I mean, I don't know, they might have reached there, Swish and all. I don't know how big they
No,
are.
they have not yet.
Not really, right? But people are trying, right? They're doing something. For instance, Zepto, I think, right? So there was we
Yeah.
had Dunzo earlier, right? Who did delivery in
Hmm.
30 minutes. Zepto came and
Yeah.
said do it in 10 minutes,
10
right? So
minutes.
something that you felt, and Dunzo was a very good app, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah. Oh, I
great,
loved Danzo. Yeah.
right? So yeah, I mean, that is another thing that I think like just doing. So if you are doing something e-commerce today, just don't think that your Flipkart, Amazon is already there.
Yeah.
Right. I am personally, I personally, I'm a great fan of doing something that is already proven as a business model, and just
Yeah.
doing it in a way that is completely different, right? I mean, that's the
Yeah.
idea. Like, I mean, you recently we had our space launch, right? Like, so we already have ISRO, but some private player thought that we'd launch satellites
Yes.
better.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, that keeps happening, right? Like finding a better way to do things and always questioning that, right? So yeah, that is, I think, another thing that maybe I wanted to say regarding, I think, the specific topic of the slide. I think payments compliance is mentioned here. uh, I would say for an early stage startup, those
Hmm.
are things, unless you're into fintech,
Hmm.
right? I think uh, I think it's much more important to find product market fit.
Yeah.
Payments and compliance may become much later in the journey,
Hmm.
right? So if you're an early stage startup,
Hmm.
the idea is that your payments, yeah, don't fret a lot about payments initially. It's okay to be a bit
Yeah.
easy on compliance. Those are
Easy.
problems that come much later, right? Like I would yeah, maybe, yeah, like in compliance you can take a few shortcuts. Like for instance, there were times when we delayed our tax filings as a company,
Right.
right? And
Right.
like basically paid our taxes late so that we could use that extra cash to fund our business.
Yes.
And we did the
Yes.
math that this is like a high interest loan for us, right? Like the fine
Exactly.
on the tax is a high interest loan for us. So I don't say
Right.
that very often, and this is pre
Yeah.
2017 also, very early days. So like
Yeah.
that few lakhs rupees also made a lot of difference. So
Of course.
yeah, so those are some of the things, like maybe
Yeah.
compliance come a bit later in
A
the
bit
journey.
later.
Right now it is, yeah, it's very important to get things up and running, finding product
So
market
I
fit.
think, guys, this is what experience is talking, because in theory, and what your accountant might say, what your a friend CA might say, कि नहीं, you have to have these things in place and everything. But what I मतलब जो चीज़ मुझे सबसे ज़्यादा अच्छी लगी, what you said is कि वो जो आपका एक्स्ट्रा कैश है वो शायद अभी आपके किसी और काम के लिए ज़्यादा यूजफुल होगा, rather than going ahead and doing your compliances. So
Yes.
understand. बट देन ऑल द स्टार्टअप्स यू नीड टू ऑल्सो अंडरस्टैंड कि आप कौन से स्टेज पे हो. आप एकदम आगे पहुंच के ये वाला goof up नहीं कर सकते
Yes.
हो.
So that as a founder, you have to make the right decisions. You need to know, when you get into that mode. Yeah. So an appreciation. So it's about an appreciation of the risk, right? I think ये काफी बार बोला जाता है कि startup is all about reducing the risk you have in the business.
Hmm.
um, and right, so as you basically go ahead, like the idea is you de-risk your startup, right? So need to be very aware of what can kill you as a startup on day one, and the number
Yeah.
one reason you'll die on day one is you don't have enough revenue. So the
Yeah.
idea, I think, at the stage should be to get revenue, I think. And I think we can go to the slide on the numbers every founder must track. I think that I think is the one that
Yeah.
uh, again, I think right now all of these are like, I think growth is maybe the most important one isme. I think CAC,
Hmm.
matlab organic, ये भी I would say for an early stage startup is थोड़ा late
Hmm.
है. I think guessing people are at a 0 to 1 journey, so the entire thing is about how do I get enough customers who are really interested in using the product. I think that's pretty
Yes.
much, I think, is what is relevant. यार मतलब um, तो उसमें तो मैं तो क्या बोल सकता हूँ, आई डोंट नो, मतलब जैसे B2B B2C, देयर आर टू वेज ऑफ डूइंग इट. आई थिंक,
Right.
आई एम श्योर people are figuring that out, and you would also have a lot of good insights on how to grow in the initial days.
Yeah.
um, I would say कि हाँ मतलब like today it's just much more easier to sell on the internet, right? So मतलब people are, you can, like, may not be at a disadvantage at all, being from a
Hmm.
small city,
Hmm.
right? Like थोड़ा सा I think fintech में थोड़ा हो जाता है because banking access जो होता है थोड़ा सा better होता है in, let's say, a city like Bangalore or
Hmm.
Bombay, if you,
Hmm.
let's say, need a very advanced banking solution, right?
Huh.
But if it's about using the internet, I think internet is a great equalizer. तो
Right.
हाँ, तो वहाँ पे I think there is no one at that who's at a disadvantage at all, right? And you can actually, it's an advantage for you because you have a lower cost base, right? So
Right. Right.
you can
So
survive on a
could you
much
give
lower.
us an insight, like how you used to deal with these questions, like what is your burn, what is your CAC, what is your MRR, and the earlier
Mhm.
stage? Matlab, maybe when the first time you were
Yeah,
visiting investor, and if they,
correct.
give you these questions,
Hmm,
what were you
hmm, hmm,
answering
hmm,
them?
hmm. Yeah, so burn is very survival related. I think actually burn was the most important question because when you are, let's say, you have not raised money or you have just raised a very small round in the early days, the idea is to get your revenue above your expenses and basically
Mm,
get burned down to a minimal. Again, right, I think it's very advisable to have burn that is zero burn. Like I think we were fortunate enough to be profitable for a long period. Like maybe the first 1.5 2 years we were not profitable, then we were fortunate to be profitable, then we had a phase where we are not profitable, and then right now, recently we are at least profitable at a monthly level. Maybe this year annual level will be. So I mean, I think it's much, life is much better as a founder, I think, if you're not in a burn and counting runway. I think
right.
stress wise, and so I would highly advise or recommend that, yeah, don't increase your spends, right?
Mm, mm,
Yeah, and keep the burn absolutely negative, rather negative burn, like being profitable, I think, is the right way. Usually people
mm,
say that I have to raise
mm,
money, and the question is
mm,
why, right? Like
mm,
grow your revenue, find ways to grow
mm,
revenue,
mm,
right? And have enough savings, personal savings. At least you should have 1 or 2 years of personal savings, ideally, you know when you start up, right? So yeah,
mm,
so those are some of the things. So how we dealt with it? Yeah, we kept our cost very minimum, right? Like very very low. Like basically, we did not, personally did not pay any personal tax for the first 3 years of our existence, and we paid ourselves a very bare minimum salary. We worked out of an apartment, right? So
right.
yeah, so that's how we kept it, like kept the burn very low, and that gave us a larger breathing space, a lot more
Mm,
time to get revenue, and stuff like that.
got it.
That is CAC versus LTB. Again, CAC, the best way is to keep it minimal, right? That's the ideal
Mm,
way, right? That, which means a lot of your acquisition has to be organic. Can't
mm,
rely on paid.
mm,
For today, organic means a lot of GEO, right? Like your
mm,
SEO has evolved into GEO. Like the LLM model has to recommend you, I think, as the preferred business of your type. So there are a lot
mm,
of ways how you do GEO. One of the newer ways is user generated content, which means people on Reddit, Twitter, LinkedIn need to be talking about you. So there are ways how seed
yeah.
that or get that done. Again, the best way is the founder does that organically on their own. Like you get
Mm,
involved into topics and start writing. But
got
yeah, the idea is CAC has to be zero, like close to zero, or major share has to be organic. We see that, I mean, that our traffic from GEO, I can tell from our experience, is growing, let's say 5x year on year, right? Much more than our website traffic.
Acha.
And the conversion rate also is 5x more, right? So, like, so the GEO contribution is growing 25x in a year, right? That kind of a number. And very, very important. As of today,
Mm,
GEO is,
mm,
indispensable.
mm,
Right. As an example, I'll give you that, when I used to, like, I was recently traveling, and like everyone, I did the research, right? Which are the places to eat,
mm,
using LLM, right? But the fact was, whatever places the LLM suggested, and when I
yeah.
went there, I could not enter any of the places because all of those places had a queue of 30 minutes outside, right? And this is
Wow.
not India, this is Europe, right? So that's how GEO is working, right? So
Yes.
it's
Yes.
very important to be listed there, right? So
Yes.
yeah, like it's an unfair advantage for the first, it will
Mm,
saturate and even out later on, but as of today,
mm,
next 3 4 years,
mm,
I think, you
mm.
have a business. If you are good at GEO, I think you have a business.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's I think one thing, how definitely something that founders should learn, how to get organic growth.
Right.
As it's
A
a huge
lot of
advantage.
our startups are product based, like I told you. So there is one startup, they are making homemade organic achar जो
Yes,
मम्मी या दादी नानी लोग बनाती थी किसी टाइम पे. So they are doing that. There is one
correct.
person, they are creating आर्ट, मतलब अपनी बुंदीली आर्ट उसको वो हर फॉर्म में लेकर आ रहे हैं. तो यू कैन यूज दैट इन अ फ्रेम ऑल्सो, ऑन योर वॉल ऑल्सो, गमछास ऑल्सो, मोमेंटोज ऑल्सो, फ्लावर पॉट्स ऑल्सो. तो ये सारे हमारे प्रोडक्ट बेस्ड, कुछ हमारे ऐसे प्रोडक्ट बेस्ड स्टार्टअप्स भी हैं. तो
Okay.
फॉर देम तो इट्स वेरी डिफिकल्ट, क्योंकि इन्वेस्टर्स जो नंबर चाहते हैं, सुनना चाहते हैं, और जो डेली बेसिस पे सुनते हैं, वो नंबर्स सिटिंग इन झांसी इज वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू गेट. मतलब यू माइट गेट
Hmm.
ऑर्डर्स, यू आर ऑल्सो प्रॉफिटेबल, आपका बर्न भी नहीं है, पर फिर भी आपके नंबर्स वो नहीं है जो एक वीसी
Correct.
को देखने में अच्छे लगते हैं.
Doesn't matter, right? अपना गोल है अपने को बिजनेस बड़ा करना है. Might take a bit longer, right? We need to be ambitious. आप झांसी में grow करो, right? And then when the time comes, I think you might want to take it to the rest of the nation, right? And that's where maybe you might need business funding. But तब देखेंगे.
राइट.
First you grow organically, you have a successful business, ideally which is profitable. And then founders do make the shift, right? At some point they might say, अच्छा यार मेरे को बहुत जरूरी है, I will now go to Delhi, or let's say some place like Bangalore. That will come in the journey, right? Maybe you know you it, but you will be a successful business regardless, right? Maybe you will not move in the first year, you will move in the fifth year, sixth year, तो देखा जाएगा, right? Maybe you will have a core base in Jhansi and you will have some
या
offshoot satellite office in Bangalore, right? Theoretically,
या
but it's way more
या
important to have like a core business that is
हम्म
thriving. uh,
हम्म
there should not be a limit on ambition, right? आपका ambition तब भी high होना चाहिए, right? Because I've
राइट.
seen a lot of good businesses. And this is a problem with Indian businesses in general also. For instance, Indian businesses don't think global, right? We don't build for the world.
या
One
या
reason is we have a high captive market, and the second,
हम्म
like local market, and the second reason is we just don't think. But now that is changing, right?
या
So those things, like, so if you are, there are businesses we have seen in small towns. Like there is this guy who sells maybe hair oil, right? He's a barber,
हम्म
right? And he has a huge business, right? He makes 2 3 4 crores just at his as a barber, right? Which is huge, but he's
हम्म
not thinking how to make it 300 crores,
या
right? Or even 30 crores, right? So that thought should be there, and rest, I think let things grow as when the time is right.
या
Eventually, you will find capital, right? I mean, it will make sense for someone to invest there,
yes
right?
yes yes. You want me to go ahead?
Um, yeah, I think financially, I would say the first biggest mistake is if your burn, is high and you run out of
हम्म
money, right?
हम्म
Baki sab comes later, I would say, right?
हम्म
So I think, yeah, I would that's what I would say. These things all matter, but they matter at a much 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 later stage. And usually, अगर absolute number में देखोगे, you die because you basically burn too much money, not because of these
burning one.
things.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Use your money, spend your money very wisely,
yeah.
right? Because and it's like a momentum also thing, right? Let's assume when you are making money, you will think that it's very hard, कि मैं
हम्म
negative में जा ही नहीं पाऊंगा, सोच के जितना भी मैं सोचूं.
हाँ हाँ
But when you are negative, suddenly you will go negative, and
हम्म
you might end up, then you will find it very hard to, go from negative to positive. So it's, so momentum is everything, चाहे वो positive momentum हो या negative momentum हो, it's very different to change that.
yeah.
So yeah, so that is the thing. Okay.
Okay.
Um, this again, much later, right? Like these are all relevant for a fintech company, right? These all
हम्म
reduce costs.
हम्म
The idea is to, increase revenue. I
yeah.
think, right? I think, as I said, right, like growth is the most important factor, right? And like geo is something that we really focus on these days, and I think
हम्म
there is a gap there is enough, being an early mover and all, you can get an advantage. Like if you're selling achar,
Yeah.
I'm sure someone is searching, or asking Claude about, what is the best way to, get achar delivered to my place,
Yeah.
and your
Yeah.
startup has to feature there, right? You will get that order for sure,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's the idea.
Shambhavi, make a note of it. So I'm just, I told her Shambhavi because
Okay. Uh,
so she just rebranded her whole product
hmm,
line.
hmm,
So now
hmm,
she
hmm, hmm, hmm.
कैसे करना है, how to go about it. So I
Yeah.
think
Yep.
she should.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I'm guessing they're selling on a website, right?
Yes, and mostly Instagram, word of mouth for now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Instagram also works. I mean, I'm not very familiar with how to run a business on Instagram, but I
Hmm.
think,
Hmm.
but for consumer startup, I can imagine, that would be the
Yeah.
best way to, scale. Right.
I think we can take questions also now.
I can see some questions already. Maybe, yeah.
Acha,
If there
okay.
are others, we can also take them.
Why can't I see? Okay.
Should I join the chat, or how do I do this?
What should startups keep in mind when expanding to international markets and accepting cross-border payments?
Um, International markets, I think you just need a payment gateway actually, because today, as a payment gateway, you can sell globally, right? Sitting out of Jhansi or anywhere else, I think, not much actually. Like you will be able to, collect payments in, almost 140 currencies, get the money next day, get an FIRC, which is the foreign inward remittance certificate, right? If you are goods, you might need some registration and import export IEC code,
Hmm.
with the DGFT, which is the Director Generate of Foreign Trade.
Hmm.
But if for services, not even that, right? So I think, it's much more accessible. Shipping is much more global these days, right? Hence, I was saying, right, that if you are a, services company, it's much easier. Goods, maybe a couple of, certificates that might be needed. But if you're like a software company, SaaS company, you are ready, right? Almost ready to, sell globally, and payment gateway will get you set up
Hmm.
there.
Hmm.
Um, what are your parameters to know about a startup is ready to scale? Okay. That sounds like product market fit. I think product market fit. I think, and like YC, I mean, what they used to tell us, is when product market fit is when customers are pulling the product out of your hand and you can't serve them fast enough, right?
Hmm.
So when
Hmm.
you are breaking apart because of demand, that's when you're ready to scale, right? That's PMF, right? And Michael Cyber told us this. I mean, Moksha
Right.
might have interacted.
Right.
So yeah, that is what I think we also think. So when demand is so much that you can't serve demand, right? So let things break to that scale, and then
Hmm.
fix it,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? If it's not
Maybe
breaking, it's too soon to fix it, right?
too soon to fix it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. As a founder who's just started generating revenue, what payment and cash flow practices should I establish today so they don't become bottlenecks as the business scale?
What payments and cash flow practices should I establish today? I mean, cash flow practice is basically make enough revenue, like, if you're making enough revenue, then you will be fine, usually, right? Like, I mean, the cash flow issues largely arise from not having enough revenue, right? And spend
Yes.
very wisely, right? And spend
Hmm.
very wisely, right? That is the cash flow practice, right? Don't
Hmm.
spend too much, don't spend too early,
Hmm.
fix things only when they're broken, don't overhire, don't hire people too fast, right? Let fill up the demand, like let someone say I'm fully saturated with work,
Hmm.
right? um, Judge on the outcomes, I would say. Like, I think it's, sometimes we judge, I think, on the input metrics maybe. um,
Hmm.
so I mean, yeah, so result versus efforts, I think, is something that is a I would say key thought that happens, right? So you want outcomes, but like the only thing that is in your control is your input metrics or the work that you're putting in.
Hmm.
So इसमें the thought I think usually is that मतलब you have to, on a day-to-day basis, you have to make sure that your input metrics or the work that you are doing is moving you in the direction of the outcome, right?
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
it's like evaluating your work always from the lens of an outcome. Like you are
Hmm.
doing an input metric ki by whatever it is, this is the work I am doing, but always be
Hmm.
tied to the reality, like doing that smell test or evaluating whether this is actually moving me towards the outcome. If it is
Hmm.
moving, great, and if it is not, not getting I would say perturbed by that, right? Like a lot of the problem comes is, just journey important hai, destination important hai. So the point is you have to be in the moment of the journey, but make sure that the journey is going towards the destination that you have defined always. All right,
Right.
that thing you have to do on a daily or a micro level. नहीं तो you it might end up कि आप journey तो करे जा रहे हो, but destination कहीं और है, आप कहीं और पहुंच गए, right? Which is
Right.
typically what happens. जैसे आप मैं sales का बंदा हूँ तो end of the month I did not achieve my targets, but on a daily basis did I do everything that needed to be done, right? Did
Hmm.
I find those 100 contacts, did I make those 100 calls, right? And did I follow up everyone? So all of that you
Hmm.
have to do on a daily basis, तभी जाके आप पहुंचोगे,
Right.
um, on the destination, which is whatever is your sales target, as a founder. So वो
Hmm.
एक है. um, how do you see AI transforming digital payments and financial operations for startups? It's a bit early to say. My take would be payments and financial services, from a consumer perspective and from a perspective in terms of new opportunities, will get transformed last, because at least from a payments point of view, because it's a regulated space, so like safety first,
Hmm.
right? And itna kuch abhi jo whatever I think improvements that need to be done, I think I mean they are not being done because of regulations, number one,
Hmm. Hmm.
and B, because there are much bigger problems, before the payment come in, right? Like so for instance, like even if you're booking an Uber cab, right? It's more difficult to book the Uber cab automatically using AI rather than making the payment to the Uber cab, right? So first, the problem to solve is agentic commerce, which
Hmm.
is the process of booking or making the order, making the transaction.
Hmm.
By transaction, I don't mean payments, right?
Hmm.
So payments will probably move the last, because as a consumer, definitely I don't think anyone is ki bhai, free ka pay, make it very easy to spend money. I don't think any of us spends money that frequently, and we want to make spending of money that easy. So that's the payments part of it, but commerce I think needs to be much easier. So,
Hmm.
and especially complex payment flows, so ordering from Swiggy, Zepto, on a daily basis, that again is something that Swiggy, Zepto can probably solve. But
Hmm.
maybe the more complex buying processes is something that AI can help. And I think there B2B commerce is something that is also very important, because B2B processes are much more complex than a B2C process. B2C, I mean, research is yes, just say you're buying insurance and also those are examples of some complex processes. Tax filing is a more complex process. So वहाँ पे there
Hmm.
is scope. It's all
Hmm.
agentic commerce. Like the payment is it's not as hard as of today.
Yeah.
B2B on the other hand, yeah, both the buying journey and the payment journey, I think there is scope, because just like to give an example of how an enterprise procurement works, right? Like you will do the research of all the vendors you could buy from. Let's say we are buying some marketing tool, right? Something that
Hmm.
sends email in bulk, just very hypothetical. So we have to
Hmm.
do evaluate all the possible startups, look at their pricing, right?
Hmm.
Sign a legal agreement with them, right? For regulated entities, do some sort of vendor risk assessment, vendor diligence as a process,
Hmm.
right? And you have to do reconciliation ki bhai whatever number they are charging, is that accurate or not, and then you have to
Right.
finally make a payment, right? So it's a slightly more complex process, right? That is there. So that's just an example of why of how it's that's more ripe for disruption, I would say.
Right.
So how can AI? startups that don't have SEO specific websites, improve customer acquisition. Uh, yeah, so I think here there are a lot of startups that are working on this, that are offering their services. Like making your website fit for AI, making it discoverable on Google Maps, making it discoverable on search engines, which I was saying. So the good part is uh, what you need to do for SEO is very similar to what you need to do for GEO, except
G.
maybe the user-generated content. Reddit pe people are writing about you, and LinkedIn pe people are writing about you.
Yeah.
So on a whole, like whatever you were doing for SEO should work for GEO with minor
Mm.
tweaks.
Mm.
How can AI help startups? I think there are tools of every kind, right, which you can access
Yeah.
sitting in any part of the
Any
world,
product. Yeah.
right? So yeah, and it's a big opportunity, right? I think
Yeah.
so geo is one, conversion is other. Key your website traffic is coming. How to give them
Mm.
the right sort of offers and all. Again,
Mm.
not 0 to 1 problems. Conversions, maybe
Yeah.
that's more coming later. Right now, I think it's just acquisition and getting discovered at a zero
Yeah.
to one journey is
Yeah.
what's the most important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Guys, if there is one last question, we'll take just one more question. And
Um,
I think we have taken all the questions. My question for you is, this is
mhm,
not related to payments. This
mhm,
is related to you as a founder. Okay.
mhm, mhm,
So, sometimes you are running short on cash, but your
mhm,
product is really crazy. You are getting customers, you are getting their good reviews, you are seen, and uh, you just have another month or two. That's your runway, okay? And you will be, not operational after that. You'll be shut. So, in that case, you get an investor who is ready to put in money but is giving you a very bad valuation. Of course, he has the right to do that at that point of time when you need it. How important it is to understand the kind of investor you need on your table. Because I have heard never say no to money, but
mhm,
then matlab, a lot of my founder friends have said this, can never say no to money. But what I
mhm.
have experienced, and a lot of my friends have also experienced, that the kind of investor you bring on your cap table is also very important. So, what is
Yes.
your um, rev- your opinion on that?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that I would also say never say no to money, but I would also say that it needs to be an investor who is aligned with the vision and the direction of the company, right? How you want to run the company, or where you want the product to go, right? So it's like, for instance, like there are two kinds of founders or companies, as people say, right? Peter Thiel says this, that either you're a missionary or a mercenary. So at least
Yes.
at that level, you need to align, right? If you are a missionary, go with a missionary investor, and if you're a mercenary, go with a mercenary investor. So at least at that level, you should align,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, after that, I think then it's fine, right? I mean, so the situation you said, the terms are bad, so there is not much you can do.
Yeah.
But valuation is not that important, I would say. It's okay to dilute. What's more important is things like the rights that you have and all of those, right? uh,
Yeah.
you know is there any terms and conditions that come attached with the money, right?
Yeah.
That's where I think you need to be a bit more circumspect, right? Are there any liquidation preferences and those kind of things, right? That's where where the type of investor also, like the color of money comes into the question a bit, right? Like
Yeah.
it's coming with a lot of bells and whistles attached. Else, just pure money with valuation, like I would take, like money without any bells and whistles at a lower valuation, in
Hmm.
hindsight, over, let's
Hmm.
say, money at a higher valuation, but let's say it comes with bells
Yeah.
and whistles, which make the
Yeah.
valuation itself, or a
Yeah.
bit circumspect.
Yeah.
Right. So those are some of the things, right?
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. It was a wonderful experience, and I'm sure you all had a great time with this. And to all the founders, whoever wants to connect with Mr. Ju, you can always reach out to him on LinkedIn, and whenever he gets time, he will, reply to you and see whatever best he can help you guys with. And
Yeah, yeah,
again,
yeah.
thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Moksha. And yeah, nice, wonderful catching up with everyone who's there.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.